Welcome to Vintage US Coins. Today we are taking a deep and comprehensive journey into the history, design, wartime significance, production details, composition, varieties, gradings, and collector value of the 5-cent coin from the year 1945. This coin is widely known as the 1945 Jefferson War nickel. At first glance, it may look like a small and simple 5-cent piece, but in realities, it is one of the most historically important nickels ever produced by the United States Mint. To fully understand the importance of the 1945 nickel, we must begin with the background of the Jefferson Nickel series. The Jefferson nickel was introduced in 1938. It replaced the Buffalo nickel, which had been in circulation since 1913. The Buffalo nickel featured a Native American portrait on the obverse and an American bison on the reverse. Although it was artistically admired, the design caused production difficulties because the date and details wore away quickly in circulation. The United States Mint decided to introduce a new design that would be more durable and easier to produce. A design competition was held. Felix Schlag, a German-born American sculptor, won the competition. His design featured President Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Jefferson's home, Monticello, on the reverse. The new nickel entered circulation in 1938 and quickly became a familiar part of American daily life. Now we move forward to the early 1940s. The world was at war. World War II officially began in 1939 in Europe. The United States entered the war in December 1941 after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Once America entered the war, the entire economy shifted to support the military effort. Factories began producing weapons, vehicles, ships, aircraft, and ammunition. Raw materials became critical resources. Nickel metal was one of those critical resources. Nickel was essential for manufacturing armor plating, tanks, aircraft engines, and other military equipment. The government needed every possible supply of nickel for the war effort. Because of this urgent need, the United States Mint made a historic decision. Beginning in late 1942 and continuing through 1945, the composition of the 5-cent coin was changed. The traditional composition of the Jefferson nickel was 75% copper and 25% nickel. But during the war years, the nickel metal was removed entirely from the coin. Instead, the coin was struck using an alloy containing 35% silver, 56% copper, and 9% manganese. This is what makes the 1945 nickel so special. It is officially known as a war nickel. The 1945 Jefferson nickel represents the final year of wartime production. It was minted during the same year that World War II ended. The war in Europe ended in May 1945. The war in the Pacific ended in September 1945. Now let us carefully examine the obverse of the 1945 war nickel. On the front of the coins, you will see the left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson appears calm and composed. His hair is tied back in the fashion of the 18th century. The word liberty appears to the right of the portrait. The date 1945 is located next to liberty. The national motto "In God We Trust" appears along the left side of the coin. At first glance, the obverse appears very similar to earlier Jefferson nickels. However, the most important identifying feature of the war nickel is found on the reverse. Now let us turn to the reverse side. The reverse features the image of Monticello, Jefferson's historic home in Virginia. The architectural details include the dome, columns, and balanced structure of the building. Above the building appears the word Monticello. Below it is the denomination 5 cents. Around the edge are the inscriptions United States of America and E pluribus unum. The phrase E pluribus unum means out of many one. It symbolizes the unity of the American states into a single nation. The key difference on the 1945 war nickel is the mint mark placement. For the first time in United States coinage history, a large mint mark was placed above Monticello on the reverse. This was done so that the special wartime composition coins could be easily identified and separated after the war if necessary. The 1945 war nickels were produced at 3 mints. Philadelphia produced coins with a large P mint mark above Monticello. This was historically significant because it marked the first time the Philadelphia Mint used a P mint mark on a circulating coin. Denver produced coins with a large D mint mark in the same position. San Francisco produced coins with a large S mint mark above Monticello. The presence of the large mint mark is the easiest way to identify a 1945 war nickel. Now let us discuss mintage figures and production scale. Millions of 1945 war nickels were struck at each mint. Philadelphia produced the highest number. Denver and San Francisco also produced substantial quantities. Because of the relatively high mintage numbers, the 1945 war nickel is not considered rare in circulated condition. However, its silver content and historical significance make it highly collectible. Now let us talk about silver content and intrinsic value. Each 1945 war nickel contains 35% silver. Although the coin is small, it contains real precious metal. For this reason, even heavily circulated examples are typically worth more than face value. The silver content gives the coin both historical and intrinsic appeal. Collectors appreciate it not only for its design, but also for its connection to wartime resource management. The war nickel represents sacrifice and adaptation. The government removed nickel metal from the coin to support military production. Even small changes in coin composition reflected the seriousness of the national war effort. Now let us examine condition and grading. When evaluating a 1945 war nickel, collectors look at several factors. They examine the details of Jefferson's hair and face on the obverse. They inspect the steps of Monticello on the reverse. One important designation in Jefferson nickel collecting is full steps. Full steps refers to the visible steps at the base of Monticello. If the steps are clearly defined and uninterrupted, the coin may qualify for a full steps designation. Full steps war nickels are more difficult to find because many coins were weakly struck or worn in circulation. Coins with full steps can command significant premiums in higher grades. Uncirculated examples with strong luster and minimal contact marks are also desirable. Proof coins were not produced for circulation during 1945, so collectors focus primarily on business strike examples. Now let us consider the historical symbolism of the 1945 war nickel. The year 1945 marked the end of a global conflict that reshaped the world. Millions of soldiers served overseas. Families waited anxiously for news. Factories worked day and night to support the war effort. The 1945 war nickel was circulating during this dramatic and emotional year. It may have passed through the hands of factory workers building aircraft. It may have been used by soldiers on leave. It may have been saved by families as a small keepsake from wartime America. Coins are silent witnesses to history. They do not speak, but they travel through events and generations. The war nickel stands as a physical reminder of national unity and shared sacrifice. After the war ended in 1945, the United States Mint returned to the original copper and nickel composition in 1946. The large mint mark above Monticello was removed. The coin returned to its traditional appearance. This makes the 1942 through 1945 nickels unique within the Jefferson series. The 1945 issue represents the final chapter of that wartime experiment. For collectors building a Jefferson nickel set, the war nickels form a special subseries. Many collectors aim to obtain examples from each mint for each war year. Because of silver content, war nickels have always been popular with both coin collectors and silver investors. When storing a 1945 war nickel, it is important to protect it from moisture and excessive handling. Although it contains silver, it can still tone or develop surface marks over time. Cleaning should always be avoided. Cleaning damages surfaces and reduces collector value. Even though millions were minted, the 1945 war nickel remains historically significant. It connects us directly to World War II. It reflects the economic adjustments made to support victory. It represents how even everyday objects were influenced by global events. When you hold a 1945 war nickel, you are holding more than a 5-cent coin. You are holding a piece of wartime America. You are holding silver that replaced nickel so that tanks and aircraft could be built. You are holding a symbol of adaptation, unity, and determination. At Vintage US Coins, we believe that every coin carries a story. Some stories are about rare mintages. Some are about design changes. Others, like the 1945 War Nickel, are about national survival and victory. The 1945 Jefferson Nickel stands as one of the most meaningful 5-cent coins ever produced. It marks the end of a global war. It marks the end of wartime coin composition. And it reminds us that even small coins can reflect large historical moments. If you enjoyed this deep exploration of the 1945 5-cent war nickel, make sure to like this video. Subscribe to Vintage US Coins for more powerful historical coin stories. And share in the comments whether you have a 1945 war nickel in your collection. Thank you for watching.